Hi, welcome to the Queen of Cups. I'm Afura.
I'm Ashera, and today we are drinking champagne, which we drove the struggle bus to open, and so it is the best champagne I have ever had.
Because it better be.
Yeah.
Cheers to
Dude.
that. So, we're from Queen City Magazine, which is a Buffalo-oriented magazine for awesome women by awesome women. And this little segment is for witches by witches. So we met through Queen City and decided, oh my God, we're both witches, and we just got really excited and we're like, let's talk about witch shit. So here we are.
Here we are. Get your witch on, my dude.
So magic is something that not everybody believes in, but the best kind of people do. So hopefully you are one of the best kind of people. We're just going to start by talking a little bit about what it means to be a witch and how we practice. So from what I have learned, every witch is different. Like, there are as many kinds of magic and as many kinds of witchcraft practices as there are practicing witches. So I always love to hear like what someone's practice is like and like learn and grow from them. So from my perspective, magic is really mainly a psychological thing. I'm really into programming the subconscious mind to get results, basically, which is very difficult to do during Mercury retrograde, which we're going to be talking about in a second. But basically, my practice is a lot about journaling to like really know myself and understand what's going on in, my psyche as well as what's going on around me. And it's kind of my worldview that everything that happens around you is sort of a reflection of what's happening inside. And it's all meant to kind of teach you something about life. So I'm not the kind of witch that focuses on gods and goddesses, really. I like to hear about that stuff and it inspires me, but I think of those things as more like psychological constructs that humans have created to kind of put a face to the energies of the universe. To me, the universe is like one big conscious organism, and we're like the cells, kind of, and we kind of have to find our place within that. And the difference between a regular person and a witch is that regular people just kind of let life throw them around and think they're a victim, and a witch is somebody who is willing to learn what these universal energies do and use them to make his or her life a better life. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what being a witch is to me. I mainly work with, like I said, journaling and tarot cards and like the universal cycles of like the sun cycle, the moon cycle, and some astrology that I'm still learning about. So
I use the term spiritual naturalist, so much like Afura,
I love that.
I like being a part of the pattern. I can't conceptualize divinity that is separate from us or that is controlling us, but I think that we're part of the machine. And we can see some of those patterns, and a lot of ancient people have seen those patterns. I'm really big into rune reading, so understanding the cycle runes and understanding where your lesson is for that point, and just sort of understanding that you can't always be in bloom, that sometimes you have to sit still. But you can't always sit still too, because that sucks and it's not fun. But learning how to work with that cycle and say, okay, and that you're going to align your self with your higher self if you learn your lessons and you can complete your journey. I also am not very, I can't conceptualize divinity that's separate from us, like I said, but I'm really into symbols. So I think prayer and words and symbols mean something, which is why I cover my body in tattoos, because those symbols mean something to me.
Ink for the win.
Yes, but I think that I believe very much in the power we put behind things. So some of the symbols, like I have a labyrinth on my back. Labyrinths have been around for thousands of years. They're really important to me because I walked one and it was very moving and life-changing.
I have always wanted to do
that. Oh,
that.
it's dope, man.
We're going to have to talk about
it
that.
It shakes you up. Like, I was like, oh, what? I'm just going to walk around in the circle thing, and then all of a sudden your brain...
Mind blown.
Yeah, but it's like those patterns. But yeah, like Afura was talking about, like psychological things. So how I practice, like I have done ritual with witches that were much more, like, organized.
Like
or
more formal?
yeah, like where they want to invoke, like the Lord and the Lady, they want to do these things, which is cool. But I'm way more of like the Enkidu, like let's go to the woods, like.
Yes,
Like,
hopefully when the weather changes, we will go to the woods. Maybe we'll film a podcast in the
Ah!
woods.
Woodcast.
Oh, that would be amazing.
But yeah, but like making sure, invoking what I want through like colors that I wear, through things that I do. I carry these things because they mean something. I'm not trying to manipulate the universe necessarily. I'm trying to get in. I'm trying to jive with it. That's what it is. So that's witchcraft for me.
Oh my god, I love that. I'm trying to jive with the universe. That is perfect. Yeah, I love what you mentioned about like just kind of working with symbols in a daily practice because like I have a blog and a lot of people will ask me questions like how do I do this kind of magic? How do I do that? And it's like, well, you don't have to be naked under the full moon picking like 4-leaf clovers. Like,
but it can be pretty fun if you are.
It can be. It can be. But like it really doesn't have to. Like it can be like, oh, I decided to wear this necklace today because this necklace reminds me of something that happened when I was a child, which makes me feel empowered because of that memory. And that, magic can be as simple as just something like that.
But yeah, I mean, one of my friends, yeah, he sells crystals and rocks and stuff. The rock dude, what up, Sean?
Shout out to Sean.
Shout out to Sean, my boy. But he also does amazing like hemp weaving and stuff. So
cool.
for a couple gifts, if it might be my thought and but my intention, but picking out stones because they do something or they channel some sort of energy. I take some stock in that. Some of it, I don't know. But when I made gifts for people, like I had a friend struggling with addiction, so I picked stones that would mean something. That would be like, this one is for breaking bad habits. Or hematite, like sucking up bad energy, like things like that. But I wanted to give her something that was, like while she was battling this addiction, that would be a tool for her. Or whether or not she believed in it, I told her what it was and she was like, thank you, like that's a cool gift.
Sometimes it's really the thought that counts.
So yeah, I mean, maybe
intention.
those rocks really maybe they do it. I don't know. I'm not like master of this universe, but at least
if only you were.
Oh, it would be chaos. Y'all would love it.
We could like both be masters of the universe, and we'll just keep each other's bullshit in check.
Like, Ashera, stop making all those weird animals. Why did you give centipedes wings and make them really big? Because they're cool.
Oh, gross.
I'm a creep.
Oh, man. So one thing that's really a huge part of my practice and like what really got me into the whole witchcraft thing is like the cycles of the universe. Like, because you were kind of mentioning like we're part of the machine. Like I believe that too. And I kind of believe that the cogs of the machine are kind of like the different cycles that we go through. So like, for example, we have our cycle as a woman, which is very similar as the cycle of the moon. And so that's kind of what segued into, that was my gateway to paganism, as they say, when I started learning about that stuff. And what really kind of sealed the deal for me was the Wheel of the Year.
Yeah.
Because basically I was just going through my life. I had a spiritual awakening, but I really didn't have any sense of direction at all. And I was also trying to build my business at the same time, which for me, like I have a witchcraft business, so like that's all kind of mushed together into my spiritual path. But I was trying to work on my business and I was so stressed out. And I looked at the calendar and the calendar said autumn equinox. And I was like, I feel like this is something that matters. I don't know what it is, but I feel like it matters. So I looked it up on the internet, and then I found out there was an entire group of people who base their entire life and spiritual practice around the solstices and equinoxes and the cross quarters in between. And that's kind of just how I got into this whole thing. So that's like kind of my thing. I'm obsessed with Wheel of the Year. I really work with the moon. But one thing that like is still kind of just I'm still dipping my toe into the water of is astrology. So, like, I've learned about the signs pretty easily because they follow the wheel of the year in a sense. But one thing that I'm still trying to learn about is this like Mercury retrograde thing. Like, what do you know about that? 'Cause, like, I'm still trying to figure it out.
Basically, there are much more well-versed astrologists out there. So this is sort of like the Ashera highlight reel. Basically, like if you watch the planets, they appear to go one direction, and then all of a sudden, a couple times a year, because of ways the universe works, that I don't quite grasp.
It's because there's cycles, like our Earth cycle is 365
Yeah.
days, and then I guess Mercury's is 4 times faster than ours. So 4 times a year it cycles around, and from our perspective here on Earth, it looks like it's going backwards. It's really still going the same way, but it has an effect on us for some reason.
Yeah, and it affects different people in different ways, and some of them hit people really, really hard. Like this past one has been kind of a dumpster fire for everyone, but yeah, you've got a good story about your worst retrograde.
I basically found out about Mercury retrograde the hardest way possible. I was just getting into astrology. This was about 3 years ago now. And I was listening to this amazing astrologer. Basically, she was talking about how, like, to have like a conscious spiritual life, you always want to be checking in with yourself, making sure that you know yourself inside and out, and you're watching for signs and making sure that, like, you know, you're being the best witch you can be, or the best person, whatever. And basically what Mercury retrograde does is it comes around 4 times a year to stir shit up and remind you of like what you're supposed to be working on or understanding or shifting or changing. And so I learned that right around the time when I desperately needed that to happen to me, apparently. So I was in a weird situation. I was like really new to some really hardcore hashtag adulting. I was basically, I didn't own the house, but basically I was taking care of a whole estate by myself. I was starting my business at the time. It was really starting to take off, and I didn't know what to do about any of it. And I was really overwhelmed with my relationship at the time. And so I was really sweeping a lot of stuff under the rug because I wanted to focus on like just the important stuff, or what I thought was the important stuff. But the universe was like, no, you're a big girl, you have to handle all of this, or you need to figure out how to like delegate tasks so that you're not so overwhelmed. And it did that by sending a plague my way on Mercury retrograde. So I was so busy focusing on my business and stuff that I wasn't paying attention to my cats. And they were indoor outdoor at the time, and I knew that I needed to like be checking up on flea medications and things like that, but I had convinced myself that I was too busy to take them to the vet, or I was too broke to buy some medication to keep the fleas off of them. And I was like, well, we've never had a real flea problem before, so I'm sure it won't ever happen to me, right? Wrong. So on the first day of that Mercury retrograde, September 2015, I will never forget, because the first day that Mercury retrograde was when the explosion of the fleas happened. And
there wasn't one or two.
No, it was thousands of them. I was so overwhelmed. I lost 10 pounds in that 3 weeks of that Mercury retrograde because it was so hot. It was that, remember, that season was really hot.
Yeah.
I was vacuuming 4 times a day. My boyfriend was not helping me at all. He would just go and stay at his mom's house. And I couldn't focus on my work. Like, all of my clients were pissed off at me. And it was just the craziest thing that had ever happened. And like, literally the day that Mercury retrograde ended, that was when I finally got the last of the fleas out of the house. And so I was like, okay, that was a real lesson for me. It's like, literally, don't sweep shit under the rug. Pay attention to the details.
Yes.
Otherwise, your shit's gonna get messed up.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I've never had one that bad again, because it took that experience for me to start paying attention and like knowing how this stuff works. But like, it was just crazy.
Yeah. This one hit me particularly hard because I have this habit of and I've learned this lesson a few times, and I have to learn it every few years. I decided to try and balance 5 jobs at once, which was not cool. That was not a good.
You did that.
I don't know why I did that, because I was like, oh yeah, like cream, casseroles, everything around me. But, and it was nice to have those checks, but my mental health hit just the most insane roadblock. My writing suffered. I my relationships suffered. My friendships, because I was just I work in the restaurant industry. I'm a bartender and a server. So when I have to people all day, I'm pretty extroverted, but all of a sudden I wanted nothing to do with anyone. And it was just I got so stressed out. Like I was just chilling on the side of the road, like was waiting for my buddy to pick me up, and I just threw up because I was so fucking stressed. And that was the wake up call that I needed to completely restructure what I was doing. And it was AsheraNeedsDaysOff.com. Money's not worth it that much.
It's not worth your sanity.
It's not worth it. And I was just not a pleasant human being. So for all my friends that stuck by me through that, y'all the real MVPs. But because that was not fun for me either. I was not fun, and that was not fun for them. So
yeah, but that's how you know who your real friends are. There's a thing, I saw this meme the other day. It showed two tarot cards. It showed the tower and the sun. And it was like, if you can't handle me at my tower, you don't deserve me at my sun.
We're going to talk a little bit about the Wheel of the Year, because we talked a little bit about cycles and Mercury. And
freaking Mercury.
So yeah, how do you like to use the Wheel of the Year?
Oh my god. Wheel of the Year is my jam, you guys. So this is just a little chart that I made of the Wheel of the Year.
You made this?
I did.
You're so fucking talented.
Aw, thank you. Basically, the Wheel of the Year to me is just, it's the way that, well, because you know how we talked about being cogs in the machine?
Yeah.
So one of the cogs is the cycle of the sun around, no, scratch that, reverse it. The cycle of the earth around the sun.
Goes right on.
Like going back to the Middle
champagne
Ages.
is kicking in, y'all.
Go back to the Middle Ages, Earth-centered astrology.
No, we're not going back there. They're gonna burn our asses.
Yeah, God, please no. Yeah, so, yeah, the Earth goes around the sun, not the sun goes around the Earth. But, yeah, basically it's just the cycle of the Earth going around the sun. And this has always been something that was really important to me since I was a small child. I was actually raised Muslim, so I was not allowed to celebrate any of the normal holidays that Americans celebrate. And I was kind of bent out of shape about that because I was kind of jealous that other people could do Halloween, and I didn't really care about Christmas that much, but I loved the fact that it was so festive and celebrating the winter, and I wasn't allowed to partake in any of it at all. So like I kind of had to combat that by finding alternative ways to celebrate the seasons, because I've always found my spirituality in watching the seasons change. So you know, fast forward years and years later, I don't live with my parents anymore. I've had my own spiritual awakening. I can do whatever the hell I want, and I can study whatever I want. So, yeah, like, it was that time when I looked at the calendar and was like, oh, it's the autumn equinox. What does that actually mean? Because I've always felt like it meant something. And when I researched it and found out that the equinoxes and the solstices were, well, basically you've got your solstices and your equinoxes. And then in between, these are what they call the major Sabbats of the Celtic culture. Yeah. And basically they're just the checkpoint between a equinox and a solstice. And so when I found out about like how people celebrated those things and how they kind of relate what's happening in nature to what's happening in the human experience, that was just everything for me. And I was like, oh my God, like my mind was just completely blown. And basically I just immediately picked it up and started using it for my own self-development. So like at the time I was building a business and I really didn't know how to structure it or what I was supposed to be doing. And when I got into that, I was like, oh my God, I need to work this into what I'm doing. So, like, not only was I using the Wheel of the Year as like something to focus my practice around, but I was also using it to develop like what I was learning in my life. And now, oddly enough, my business is centered around the Wheel of the Year. So, I actually have a program online where I take people through the Wheel of the Year for a self-development exploration course. And then I also, like, just for personal stuff, like, I take whatever's happening on the Wheel of the Year and I take the theme of that and I try to understand what is going on with that theme in my life.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the Wheel of the Year in a nutshell for me. Like, every year is more and more in depth and more interesting. So,
Definitely.
do you work with it a lot?
Yeah, it's been a part of my life just forever and always. But yeah, it definitely when paying attention to what the sun is doing, and so, and for whatever reason, my body really responds to solstices and equinoxes.
What happens?
I don't know why, but every 4 months, and it's always right on these cornerstones, I will end up not being able to sleep no matter what I try for about 2 to 3 days straight. I'm just like, my body's just like, like something's happening in the universe. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, I must sleep for like 24 hours straight. And I'm trying to like plan around
You're like
it now.
a bear, like
I do. Yeah, but I don't know why, and it's always been like that. Like, and I try and plan my life around it now. I'm like, oh, the solstice or an equinox is coming up. We're gonna have a week of just like weirdness. I can feel it, but it's sort of like it's understanding those shifts. So like the winter solstice, because after Samhain, it's like, well, I mean, after the equinox, it gets
terms. Samhain is
Halloween. But I mean, it starts with like, of course, the equinox. But once you hit like that, it just gets darker and darker and darker
and colder and colder
and colder and colder. And so you have to be like, nope, we can't. We're not going to be as productive now. You got to find that stillness. You need to take care of you. Like, you need to make your home. Like, you need to do that. And then I love like that first light of the new year where you're just like, oh fuck, like the sun will come out, and just like it's like this like glimmer of hope. I know it's the darkest night of the year, but understanding like, what am I going to build? What, like, that's the point. That's why people make New Year's resolutions. Because the number changes, but the light's gonna grow. What are we gonna grow? What are we gonna do? And I try and do that in a like micro way a little bit with just moon phases too.
Oh,
so
yeah. It's the exact same like cycle, it's just shorter.
Yeah, and it's just sort of like, I pay attention to it with like, it's a new moon, what do I want to grow right now? It's a full moon, what am I too full of? What do I need to get rid of? Because, and that's the thing, like when people talk about like getting weird around the full moon, that's the thing, because you're too full. There's too much shit going on.
I never thought of it that way.
That's at least how I think about it. Right?
I love that.
Yeah,
I love like, your Ashera
Witchery 101. Yeah, there's too much stuff, there's too much energy. That's when people just, like, I'm a bartender, people just go bananas and they decide to do the stupidest things. But yeah, that's when they're so jittery. So it's thinking, what's not serving me? What can I get rid of? What do I need to have diminish? Because then you have room for the new moon when you're like, I'm gonna start this sweet ass podcast. What? Woo!
Yeah, like, I thank you for like bringing that up, because I am so immersed in this culture that I don't always remember to explain the process. So for those of you who don't know, which I mean, I'm just assuming a lot of people who are watching this probably already know this stuff, but obviously if you're new, welcome. We're like totally not trying to be like, you can't sit with us. Yeah, basically, so you already know how seasons work, right? Like, we have winter, spring, summer, and fall. Well, basically everything in the universe follows that same cycle in subtle ways. So kind of like, for example, the Wheel of the Year is the most obvious one. The winter solstice is the darkest day of the year, as Ashera was saying. And then the day after the winter solstice, the sun starts to come back. Like, the days start to get longer again instead of getting shorter. And that is what we call the beginning of the waxing half of the sun. And then when it, like, when you switch over to the summer solstice, that's when the days actually start getting shorter, and that is like the waning side of the year. And the exact same thing happens with the moon every 28 days. So,
Yeah.
and then if you look at every planet does that, you know, our bodies do that. And it's just really interesting when you notice that like synchronicity throughout all of nature.
I do love some fucking summer solstice, but you can't be that hypey all the time. Like you gotta go chill at some point. Like that's the thing where I'm like, yeah, parties, festivals, let's do it. Let's go outside. Let's go on a hike. And then it's like, no, you need to take a nap,
You
girl.
need a
Like,
break. Yeah. Like at this point of the year, we're basically, well, we're kind of awkwardly between festivals right now.
yeah.
But well, you're talking about like summer festivals, like party. But like when I said festivals, I mean the
Like
checkpoints.
yeah, the
Some people call the checkpoints festivals because in the olden times they would have a festival for each one, which I wish we still did.
We should. We're gonna
We
bring
should.
that back.
So, what is your favorite festival? Quote unquote.
It's 10,000% Samhain because I'm a creep and I love all things Halloween and I'm just one of those people. So as soon as they start putting that stuff out at Walgreens, you best believe your girl is buying like all of the Jack Skellington things, all of the all
He's
of
my
the
idol.
all of the stuff. But I really like I mean I love all that stuff. I love the spiders and the creepy things and the ghouls and the goblins. But I love ancestor worship too, and I guess worship is the wrong, but honoring ancestors.
Veneration.
Yeah. Oh man, I just watched Coco the other day, like the best Disney movie ever.
I still haven't
Oh my
seen it.
God.
I want to see it so bad.
Yeah, I'm not crying. You're crying. But, but it's all about Dia de los Muertos, and I love the practice of honoring your ancestors and saying like your family's not always going to agree with everything you do, but are you aligning yourself with the best parts of their values, and honoring them, honoring their memory, like, and I love the story of Persephone where she goes down to the underworld.
The gothic romance.
But because she ate, like, and that's why how the Greeks explain winter, she ate pomegranate seeds, and that's why we have to have that winter, because she had to go back. She had to go back to the underworld for that time, and her mother was so sad that she put a blanket of snow over the earth. But I love that story. I love creating that altar and just sort of saying, hey, maybe I don't really know if there are ghosts or other worlds or anything like that, but I like to believe, and I like feeling like maybe the veil could get really thin. Maybe I don't understand everything that's happening, and I'm not going to try and put a name to it. I'm not going to try and put words to it, but saying, hey, maybe it could happen. Like, that's fun
That
for me.
mystery.
Yeah, I like mystery and creepy stuff.
Yeah, like, I guess I'm a fall girl too, I guess, because my favorite is probably autumn equinox. And I think the reason for that is because even though it's not quite what you call Samhain, what I call November's Eve, it's not quite that in depth into the autumn season yet. It's kind of just when the things are starting to shift and they're starting to change. And I feel like it's one of those times of the year where you can really notice nature is doing something different. It's like, all right, we've had enough of summer and now it's time to do something different. And that kind of always for me represented this shift of like, you've been extroverted and now it's time to become introverted again.
Yeah.
Because I'm an introvert who functions as an extrovert when I need to.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, for me, it's really helpful to have those reminders from nature of like, okay, now it's time to shift and do this. But yeah, I think the reason why I became such a huge fan of the autumn equinox is because, like I said, when I was a kid, I wasn't allowed to celebrate Halloween. My mom thought it was a devil worship holiday. And yeah, I was kind of raised in a religious cult, but well, that's another podcast for another time. So like we weren't allowed to do the like Jack Skellington and all that kind of stuff back then. Like, don't get me wrong, once we were teenagers and we were like, Mom, we're doing whatever we want, me and my sister became obsessed with Nightmare Before Christmas. But like for me, autumn equinox represents the autumn season starting and they're still light. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's still bright. It's not the dark depths of the autumn yet. It's like darkness and light, darkness and shadow are just starting to play off of each other in that season.
Yeah.
And you can appreciate the light parts of life while also starting to shift your gaze into the darker aspects as well. And that's just like so magical to me for some reason.
I think I like the equinoxes just, I mean, I like the solstices too. I'm not ragging on them, but like, I really like the spring equinox as well. Because after, especially like buffalo winters, where we're like, I'm pretty ambiverted, but erring on the side of extrovert. But, so being inside that long, being cooped up, like, makes me just ugh, weird. But for me, it's the first time I see a crocus. That's when I'm like, okay.
For those of you guys who didn't know, because she just introduced me to this, crocuses are snowdrops. You know, those little flowers.
Yeah, but they're the first flower of spring. They're the first time in, like, for some people it's robins and stuff, but it's, like, those two symbols, like, the ones we can see in nature here, seeing those flowers pop up after snow, and just like,
and they don't care that it's snowing here still.
They give no fucks.
They're just like, nope, I'm coming out and it's springtime.
And, but also, like, the changing of the leaves, when all of a sudden I'm like, and there it is. Like, here we are, nature, doing its thing. I'm like, cool. This is where I am.
A symbol for me as a child. Like, my mom always told me that when I was a small child, I was that kid who was intensely fixated on finding the first yellow leaf every season. Like, oh mom, there's the first yellow leaf. And so like that kind of, I think that might be like, I think the reason why I'm so obsessed with the autumn equinox is because even though I love all of the seasons, that's always the one where I would notice something and it would just immediately shift my mindset of like paying attention to what is nature doing and like feeling some kind of way about it, you know?
Yeah, I also, oh man, this is a little blast from the past. I used to volunteer at the Audubon Society in Jamestown.
Oh, cool.
And I loved, one of the things I liked about the spring equinox is vernal pools would start to come up, which are...
What's that?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. Basically, if you go out into the woods, and it's like, it's got to be closer to the summer, but basically they're these big puddles, which doesn't sound very exciting, that, you know, this is what a cool person I was. It's Friday night, I'm going to go to the wood and look at a puddle.
But, that sounds fun, honestly.
But all of these little salamanders and little creatures, that was their, like, mating time. So they all go out and it's like a little salamander nightclub, and you got
what
to just like.
What season was this?
This is the spring going into summer. But
probably around May's Eve, because that's when everything starts. Like,
that's when
looking up.
Yeah, yep.
We'll be going into that one soon, guys. We'll have to talk about it.
Yeah, that'll be a whole podcast.
Yes.
But yeah, just seeing this like little nature nightclub and being like, whoa, cool. They're all gonna try and make babies and not die before the winter, and then gotta go back to the winter. Thanks for watching us drink champagne, talk about witchy stuff. We're hoping to talk about more Wheel of the Year stuff in the future and sort of how that relates to us and magic and all sorts of things. But if you have a really stellar idea, I'm open to being dazzled with it.
Yes.
So
please
reach out to
share
us.
your ideas. Like, what do you want to hear about? Like, you basically you get to interrogate a witch, right? Like, 2 witches, in fact.
But you're not gonna get to put us on the rack or anything cool like that. Like, no.
Definitely no going into the stocks, but yeah, like we want to know what you guys want to hear about, because like this is so second nature for us that like it's just normal, but like we want to know like what do people want to hear about? What have you always been curious about witchcraft? Our intention is to meet on every new moon-ish.
Yeah, we're gonna try and put one out every new moon, because that's when we manifest things.
Yay! Yes. We're also gonna talk about, like, as the seasons are changing, because I get really excited about seasons changing, we're gonna try and talk about what's coming up for us for each one of the seasonal checkpoints on the Wheel of the Year as well. But like obviously we can segue into anything that you want to hear about, so just hit us up.
And you can drop us a line at b@queencity, QWEEN city.com. Cheers!
Cheers! We are trying to open a champagne bottle for our kickoff episode. And go figure, it's Mercury retrograde, and this guy just really doesn't want to come off.
We've been doing this for about a half hour now. To catch y'all up to speed, we've YouTubed many things. I've phoned a friend. Thank you, Grace. I flooded her sink. Trying to run hot water over this.
None of these things have worked, but
we've made progress. This is promising. Yeah, I need bigger muscles or something. Oh, fuck. Okay.
Like, it's making progress.
Yeah.
We can see that it is about a centimeter more open than it was.
This is gonna be the best champagne
it better
ever.